it's learning that it's more about what you say no to. You got to say no more. Yeah. So you can say yes to the right things. I struggle to be in the passenger seat. Yeah. Maybe there's a little bit of control there, and I think it's realizing you don't need to be in control at all times. Yeah. I think you should let people have passions and explore, and actually I have that with my team now. And I encourage my crew with their reports as well. You need to pick your moments.
Ooh, what do you mean by that?
You need to play the game.
Welcome to Stories Untold, live from Cairns Crocodiles. We're unpacking the stories we carry but don't always tell, the stories we've untold ourselves, and the stories that are still being written. In this series, we're going to spotlight the overlooked, the unpolished, and the unspoken experiences that have shaped some of Australia's most creative and influential minds. Let's dive in. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of Stories Untold. This is the series where we're going to get under the hood of the stories we carry but don't always tell, the stories we've untold ourselves, and the stories that are still being written. I am joined by Alex McLean, the General Manager of Product and Marketing at BMW, overseeing the evolution of one of Australia's and one of the world's most iconic automotive brands. A classically trained marketer with a passion for performance, both mechanical and creative, Alex is shaping the future of mobility with an amazing mix of creativity, innovation, and human insight. He's also often lauded as one of Australia's top emerging CMOs. Alex, it is an absolute pleasure to have you back again. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Dan. What an amazing introduction. Thank you.
Mate, so you have one of, and you know this,
yes,
we've discussed this, you have one of the best jobs, I think, in the world. When someone asks you what you do, what do you tell them?
Maybe the humility comes out and I say, I run marketing for BMW. I want to be humble about it, but my wife thinks that I don't work. She thinks I love my job, and I do. I have fun every day. But yeah, I'm the custodian for the brand BMW across Australia and New Zealand.
What do you wish you could tell them when someone asks you what you do?
It's like everybody here. What are we doing here? We're not at a junket. We're here for a conference, right? So we tell them the truth from a corporate perspective. But look, I love to tell people that I love my job, that I have fun, and not so much because I'm a rev head or a car head or anything like that, but I have the privilege to look after a brand that works at a SKU that is highly emotional. My background prior to BMW, where I've been over 13 years now, was in a creative agency, and I worked on a number of sectors, including FMCG, where I worked on frozen fish and peas, and the marketers there got really passionate about frozen peas. But I'm really happy to get passionate or have the passion in the world that a lot of people are passionate about, including yourself, when it comes to cars.
What's a story about you that rarely gets airtime, that you might not tell, that says everything about who you are?
Something that I like to say very early on in my career, and maybe it was an icebreaker, differentiate who I am, was I've been in advertising. I'm 39, turning 40 this year, like you, and I've been in advertising for 39 years. I had the privilege of being a child actor in commercials back when I was a child.
Really?
Yeah, I think that gave me that first little that introduction to a professional world. I obviously was a very compliant child. I have kids now who are not compliant. I can't imagine that they would sit still. But that's something different for me. You could argue I've been in advertising for 40 years.
And if you look over the sort of the trajectory of your career, if there was a moment, one of these crucible moments where there was like a really clear before and after that shaped who you were, what would that moment be?
There's probably two that come to mind immediately when you ask about pivotal moments for me in that career. I think the first one was I didn't know what I wanted to do when I finished school. I think a lot of people in that space, and at the time, I was under the impression that you needed to know when you turned 18, right?
The 10-year plan.
Well, I was at a school where you were doing law, commerce, or medicine.
Yeah.
And I wanted to do architecture. At the time, it was like, you're pushing the boundaries. But I did my gap year, like everyone kind of did at that time. Went to the UK, like every Australian did. Worked in a pub, like every Australian did. And I came back and I did 2 years of architecture, and I just wasn't ready. And I took another 2 years off, right? And for me, it was pivotal because I could have gone down a path of what are you doing, like professionally, whatever it is. And a girlfriend at the time, and I think it's good to have good people around you. She said, well, you really got to think about a space or something you want to be in, because I was under the impression you need to know what you wanted to do for the next 40 years. And I guess I leant back on, what I used to do as a kid, and it was fun and enjoyed that. And I said, I enjoy the creative side of architecture. but perhaps it's too loose in a design space for me, and I wanted something with a little more commercial reality to it, be that the case or not. Yeah. Anyway, I got on my email and I cold emailed, contacted, I think, in a dozen agencies across Melbourne. Yeah. I don't think I'm swearing when I say this. As my dad described, St Kilda Road back then was Boulevard. Yeah. That's where all the agencies were. And fortunately, a gentleman from Clemenger replied, because I literally wrote an email and said, hey, I'm not looking for a job. That was my subject line. I'm not looking for a job. I just want to find out, how I can get to be in the world that you work in. And he responded, Hugh Nand, some people may know him, he was a account director. And I went in and I just had a conversation. And exactly the same, I'm not looking for a job. And he said to me, go get a degree, go get two. You don't need it to do advertising, but it helps. Yeah. And that for me was a key moment. And I think for me that, it talks about 360, many years later, I think this was like 5 years ago, his son, LinkedIn contacted me. Oh, yeah. I'm at uni, I really want to get into marketing. Dad mentioned he know you, can I have a conversation? And I was like, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
What an amazing circle.
Yeah, I really felt this is, I'm giving back what someone gave me. So that was a real pivotal moment, I think, in my development early on.
And what changed in you and in your outlook for what a life well lived was going to be at that point in time?
Maybe this doesn't answer your question, but I guess that consideration that you need to know what's going to be happening 40 years from now.
All right, so just letting that go.
Let that go. I think we were talking before about, going on hot laps around tracks. Yeah. I struggle to be in the passenger seat. Yeah. Maybe there's a little bit of control there, and I think it's realizing you don't need to be in control at all times, which is interesting actually, because something I spoke about with someone in my team recently, that people who maybe join marketing after never doing marketing, say they come from sales or elsewhere, something they struggle with that perhaps marketers have an innate ability to be okay with is that you're never in control of everything. You're spinning multiple plates all the time, and you need to be okay with some dropping to be a good marketer in a way. So for me, it was about relinquishing control and being okay with that.
And you mentioned the second moment.
I did. And for a moment there, it went. No, look, I was fortunate to, coming back to that story, once I got my double degree, I contacted Hugh and said, hey, I'd love to have another discussion. As it is in advertising, he'd already moved agencies, and he was at BWM, and I had that follow catch up, and he actually gave me a job. So it was fantastic. But I think for me, I had a grounding on the creative side, being a suit, and I was working on BMW at Ogilvy at the time, and I was having a lot of fun, right? Mid to late 20s, agency, a lot of fun. And, they contacted me and said, we'd love for you to come and join us on this side. Yeah. And naturally, first time, absolutely not. Yeah. Right? I wore a tie at school. I'm never wearing a tie again, sort of thing. And the third time, I said, let's have a conversation. And it was a decision to move to the dark side, so to speak.
More the light.
Yeah, wow. I remember the art director, when I left, he actually drew a picture of me as Anakin Skywalker with a Darth Vader silhouette in the background. And something I get asked about a lot from people, what is it like to change sides? Yeah, but that for me was also then critical, because I'd make a call, all right, from a career, it's time to go corporate.
In that transition from agency, especially continuity of brands, what do you think is the most important thing that you let go of going into client that you were holding on to an agency, and what was the most important thing that you picked up?
I think I know one of the topics that was in my head spinning around with this move was agency culture was fantastic. If you didn't get along, you were kicked out on agency side. You couldn't be a lone wolf. You needed to have a connection. Yeah. And, I had that fear. I'm moving into a big corporate here, global corporate. There's games, there's politics, and am I going to be okay with that environment, seeing where I've come from? But I have to say, a lot of people have made that transition now, and I think what they've brought with them, and don't get me wrong, there's great people who've only ever worked brand side and been marketers, but particularly when those people have made that decision to come across, they're bringing with them culture and ability to connect and collaborate. And I think that's something that I was fearful of not being there, but very quickly, and perhaps it was, with people like myself and others, brought that into the environment.
Yeah. And what was the thing that, if there was something that set you up for success in agency land that you had to let go of to succeed in, a massive global brand like BMW?
You need to pick your moments
Ooh, what do you mean by that?
You need to play the game. I mean, as I said before, on an agency side, it was a very free and open discussion, particularly as, a relative junior account manager. You were empowered to, let's discuss. All right, creatives will shoot you down, right? And I'll come and let you know, don't change my copy, pushing my chair around. But on a corporate side, you need to play that game a little bit, and be aware of the times where, you do raise it, other times where you don't, and go along. Right.
Have you ever gotten that wrong?
Oh, I think everyone's got that wrong. Yeah. As I say to my team, if every decision we made was correct and right, we'd be being paid 7 figures plus.
Yeah.
We get it wrong more than we get it right. Yeah. But we balance our decision making, and that's why client sides can be slower. It doesn't have the pace.
What's a story that you once told yourself that you've since outgrown?
You don't know everything, and I think as a junior coming through and a middle manager, whatever it is, there's this strive to be seen as, and maybe this is a knock on me, I'm a middle child, so you always want to prove yourself. You don't want to be seen to be silly or ask the wrong question or not know. And being in the leadership role that I am in now, and I was before at Mini as well, and particularly with the leaders that I've been able to work with, they're very open in not knowing everything, and looking to their team, looking to their colleagues to empower them in being a leader and the knowledge they have. So that was probably more of a confidence thing than something that I've reskilled myself on, but the awareness that you don't need to know everything.
I want to talk about navigating uncertainty, and redefining moments, because I think that you've hit on something really interesting. But have there been a time where you've had to lead your team without a map? And what does that look like, especially in an organization where I would have thought from the outside looking in that there is a level of certainty and a level of precision that's always required.
I agree with your latter point. Yeah. I love a plan.
Yeah.
And whenever I speak to, colleagues in other markets, colleagues in Munich, the best resource is time for me. So I love a plan.
Yep.
There probably, I think when I stepped into the role that I'm in now, it was a blank piece of paper.
Yeah.
And, I wanted to work on the culture of the marketing department back then. I wanted to reset the strategy, and I needed to bring my team along without giving them that vision. So that for me was very much a moment where, we didn't know what was going to face us. Yeah. And let's be honest, anybody that works in media that I've ever spoken to has experience on auto. It seems like everyone's got experience on auto. There's a fascination towards it.
Yeah.
And naturally as an industry, there's 64 brands in Australia now. You'd argue it's a fragmented marketplace. And I couldn't have told you.
I don't think it's an argument.
No, I'm just open up there. And we're all fighting for share. So I guess where I'm getting at, there's so much change in the industry that we can't plan, but there's always a level of uncertainty. I think that comes back to my point. There's spinning plates and there's unknowns as marketers that you just need to expect and deal with, and best be prepared for it. But when I came in, add to that, we wanted to set a new vision. Yeah, that was a definite moment. And I have to say, it's probably taken 3 years to really feel, and I talked to my first line as well, and we discussed this, we're in a strong place right now.
So you came in and, this blank canvas, and I love that the first place you went was culture. What do you believe are the building blocks of an exceptional marketing team's culture?
I'm of the belief that you can't change culture. You can change the values, the ingredients, then to the culture responding to that. You can't directly go, I'm going to change the culture, right? So for me, it was working with the team, everyone from graduates through to the first line, and we average between 30 and 35 in the marketing product team. It was giving them a voice.
Yeah.
And perhaps, and this isn't reflective of BMW, but, there's times where leaders don't give their team that voice. It's very, very one way. And, in Australia, the power distance isn't like it is in other markets. I believe in Australia, if a leader works hard for you, you work hard for them.
Yeah.
So it was giving them a voice to provide what their perspective was on the ingredients or the values rather that we should live and work by.
Yeah.
Things such as be brave, take risks, and be okay with that. But we had quite a number of sessions early on to allow that. And look, we've had changes in some of the people in those first 12, 18 months, natural attrition as well. But that was the very first step, get them involved in the process.
And what do you look for in creating this, this building this Eden for your team?
Yeah.
What do you look for in your leaders?
I'm probably not going to answer your question immediately. I think to a conversation I had with my CEO recently, and I was putting someone in a new position, And it was the right person for the role, absolutely, 100%. And my CEO said, I'll back you. And it was interesting because he goes, just be mindful of making sure you don't just hire yourself, which, of course, I nodded and agreed. I didn't think I was hiring myself in that person, but I thought that was a very interesting comment because I agree with it. It is, and I said this before with regards to not needing to know everything. I want the best subject matter experts, but also people-orientated leaders around me that give a damn. That care about how someone's going to develop. They don't just want to hire someone and then set and forget. They know, particularly if it's a lower level, they're not going to be there for a long time, but how can we be the talent pool generator of the business? So that's what I look at in my leaders.
How have you changed as a leader, from that ambitious, agency practitioner to, leading one of the best car brands in the world?
I've tried to slow down, even how I speak.
I'm appreciating the pace of your...
No, well, I've just got a little tempo thing going. No, look, it's as I said, I love to do everything. I'm like, great idea, we need to do it. We need to do it. And I think I'll touch on this later today and when I'm speaking as well, but it's learning that it's more about what you say no to. You got to say no more so you can say yes to the right thing. So it's having that slow down methodology or approach to then go, all right, let's assess it. Sometimes I'm going to have to say no. And that's been hard. Right?
Is there anything else that you've had to unlearn along the way?
Look, Dan, that absolutely would be. I mean, the leadership one always comes to mind. We work in an industry where there's so many new things to learn at the same time as unlearn. So perhaps you need to put a vacuum to your head and suck out information that you learned 10 years ago. That's no longer important. You do not need to have gated competitions to build your social community. Very specific, right? So it's just, free up your mind to be able to understand the new tech and platforms that are available.
I'd love to understand, as...
I'm surprised we haven't had a car question yet. This is good for you guys.
I want to talk about the intersection of data and intuition, right? Big German brands, built on mechanical precision. But I can imagine in your world, particularly on the marketing side and maybe on the product side, there is a tension at play where sort of the data only gets you so far and intuition has to step in. What happens when you sit in this room and you have to kind of push beyond what the data is going to tell you?
A long answer to that, and I was speaking to someone on Monday night, an event you were at as well, and I've got 2 kids now, 4 and 6, and Harry, my eldest, just started school, and we were talking about curriculum, and I think someone else yesterday was talking about people are their most creative when they're 5. That's peak creative. And I guess for me, I want my kids to really have a creative perspective, to have that ability to think outside the box. So coming back to the question, I think intuition is very important. At the end of the day, I was at a talk many years ago, and someone there would use the phrase, it's been, everyone, or I'm getting it here, there's math men and there's mad men, obviously using that reference. And the math people, the data orientated, it's fantastic. It can validate a decision. But the amount of times I've been able to talk to my Daniel and my team who heads up brand comms and go, fantastic, the data's backed up what we thought was right. It's very validating, but you need both. And I have to be honest, and I'll probably get in trouble for saying this, sometimes the data is what you can show while you can do the instinct at the same time.
A common truth.
Yes, the long and the short.
You mentioned creativity, and you and I often talk about our kids of the same age. What's something, as a creative, what's something that you wish more people knew about the creative process?
Is there a process? Is there exploration?
Is it a process?
Well, I mean, thinking by design, but again, I think I come back to my own development, and I said before, I went to a school and it was like, you got to do medicine, commerce, law, and there was a snobbery to creative spaces, but I think that's changed. And I think you should let people have passions and explore, and actually I have that with my team now, and I encourage my crew with their reports as well. If someone comes to you saying, and you can see the passion with what they want to do, right? That's intuition, not always an intuition, right? It's like, let them do it. Let them find out. I mean, if they come to you with a $2 million passion, maybe not. But if there's something there, it's like, hey, we can do it. Go for it.
100%.
So explore.
Great adage, like whoever loves it most is right.
Yeah.
Right. I think that there's such a profound,
There's also hippos, highest paid person's opinion. So
you always got to watch the hippo. Do you think creativity can be built like a muscle and trained, or is it innate?
I'd say, and that's why I talked about my son, I want him to learn it early. I think everyone's creative. Absolutely. And we were talking about, I'm not going to go down the rabbit hole of AI, right? But everything is based on numbers and statistics. and you can paint by number, but doesn't mean you're Van Gogh, right? So I think everyone has it, absolutely. It can be trained as well. You let people explore, and that's why I look at it as passion.
Yeah.
And let people explore a passion topic and see what comes from it.
So what happens? Like, how do we go from all being these incredibly creative 5-year-olds? Like, what do you think plays out? And then you've just got this dichotomy between I'm not creative or I'm creative.
Oh, everyone's a marketer as well.
Yeah.
And you know, the old saying, marketing was the colouring in department. Oh, yeah. Look, I think people feel comfortable in a certain space. And I guess that's the same when it comes to development. Are you willing to step into a new area where you're not comfortable? Yeah, I mean, everyone has their strengths, I guess. You know, it's probably a roundabout answer to your saying, you feel comfortable in your area, you stay in there.
Is there any advice that you'd give to emerging marketing leaders to help foster creativity in their teams, like to nourish that, you know, that passion?
I'd come back to passion topics.
Yeah.
You sit with someone and you can tell their pace of speech accelerates. I mean, I was having the conversation with another Alex in my team who heads up experiential, and she went and reviewed a new track, and she came back, and I could just see how she was discussing it. Yes, all of the supportive arguments, but I'm like, I can see the passion here. I'd say to those leaders, empower people who've got a passion. You may disagree, but let them go and see what comes from it. Don't stop people too early on. Let the shoots grow a little bit.
Is there a creative execution or a project or a product that you were just enamored by that never saw the light of day for one reason or another?
I like direct mail. I love direct mail, and something we wanted to do. I just remember old cereal boxes. I'm talking proper old cereal boxes, and all little, you know, knickknacks and things that would come in them. And one was a record player. It was a record. It was a cardboard fold out 3D record player that used a pencil. You spin it, and then it would play the sound. And I always wanted to get a DM out for that. It was. I want this to try and lead the idea.
Hence, analog solution.
Well, I think analog tech is engaged with, right? And that's what it's all about. How do you disrupt in what is junk mail? How do you do something different?
Speaking of disruption, what do you think's being reinvented? Without saying the 2-letter acronym that we're all fatigued from hearing, in the world of brand marketing, what's being reinvented right now? And I mean, you can talk about your industry, or you can talk more broadly.
I think there was a session just early on about big ideas. I look at my industry. I think brand marketing is very much back.
Thank God.
Well, it's actually needed too. As I said, fragmented. You know, what's your point of difference? It's your brand. At the end of the day, we sell products, but people buy brands. So I think brand ideas are definitely back, and the focus on that in my industry, which is exciting. We talked about creative thinking. It's really going to be pushing people to think beyond just what the data says. So I definitely see that as being back in my industry.
In a world where, you know, everything we're talking about is moving towards the artificial intelligence, robotics, synthetic. You know, how do we maintain the soul, the human, you know, je ne sais quoi of what we do as brands?
I think one of the panelists you had on yesterday, MC, was talking about. I had a good conversation with her yesterday around production. You know, and the question of old school TVC productions gone, right? Particularly with the ability to produce through AI artists. I asked her, what's the title? AI artist. Yes, you can still produce, but the storytelling is still incredibly centered to that. And that's why we have a creative agency to lean on to help us unearth. Now, how we produce will change, but I think the central core, the idea, the soul, is still very human in how it's spun.
What's one story marketing leaders or brand stewards are telling themselves that is just holding them back?
I know one. I mean, I don't want to speak too much about AI because I think that'll be done to death.
Go for it.
I don't think it's stealing jobs. I mean, it's definitely going to see some jobs go. And my dad was a draftsman, right? And you can see those visuals of, you know, 30, 40 draftsmen, because they were all men back then, so draftsmen at the time, sitting in rooms drawing architecture drawing, and then CAD comes out and it completely defeats the need for those roles, but then it creates new ones. So I think it's just being aware that we're going to go through a period where some jobs are going to be impacted.
And it's not the first time that this is
No, but we work in an industry where innovation is critical. I work in automotive. You don't innovate, you die. So for us, I don't think to be concerned about it. I think embrace it, see how the change comes, and then create the roles around it that you can go with. I mean, there's some of the tech that I've learned in the last day and a half. Never heard of. I'm like, that I can take that 100%.
All right, Mr. McLean, we're going to end this wonderful chat with 3 untold short stories. Alex, when was the last time that you surprised yourself?
Feels like a long time ago, because when I was, I think 19, 20, when I was on my gap year, I was doing like rock climbing leadership or something like that. Yeah. And I there was a wall I could not climb, and took me a day, and I got there, and I always remember that sense of euphoria of, oh my God, I achieved something. And I have to say, I haven't really got back to that feeling, but I'm sure there's some along the way.
I'm going to ask you this question next year, and I want an answer.
Okay, all right, I have a bit of thought about it.
Self.
Yeah.
What part of you still feels in progress?
I think the leadership skills always will be in progress.
In what way?
I had this chat on Monday night again with some other colleagues, and I asked, how are you going when it comes to the recruitment of 21, 22-year-olds who had, their schooling, their later schooling and tertiary impacted significantly by lockdowns and things. And what I'm finding, and this is a broad statement, which is not fair to everyone, but some don't have the same interpersonal skills that they may have had 10 years ago, because they just, are in an environment
missed those formative years.
Correct. So for me anyway, I'm always trying to learn how can I better connect, particularly, I've got a real passion for the development of particularly graduates and first and second year marketers.
As all great leaders should.
Well, I'm really happy to see where some have gone. Of course, we don't want to lose everyone. And I do tell my team that, to get progression, you've got to have capability, you've got to have executive sponsorship, but you need luck and timing too. Yeah. And sometimes you don't have the luck, the role isn't open, we're going to lose them. But I'm really proud to see where some have gone to, where many have gone to over the last 10 years. And so for me, it's like, how can I make sure I continue to connect with those that are coming in?
There's a lot of wisdom to that answer, Alex. If this chapter of your life had a title, what would it be? And what do you hope the next chapter's called?
I'd go with like a choose your own adventure. Because I remember those books where you turn to page this.
All right. So what's this chapter in the choose your own adventure called?
I don't know. I've got to be careful here. What's next? Okay. To stay or to go, right? I've been automotive for 13 years.
And what do you hope the next chapter's called?
You chose wisely.
On that note, Alex, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks,
Ladies
Dan.
and gentlemen, Alex McLean.
Pleasure. Thanks.